Hood grown, no moms, I'll be the greatest the hood's ever known. Grown, no moms, I'll be the greatest the hood's ever known. No moms, I'll be the greatest the hood's
You
ever
can start
known.
whenever you're ready.
Hi, Hi everyone. I'm Taylor Goethe. I am a 2D animator and writer. I also work in between comic books and also as a sensitivity reader. Um, I am currently a grad student at UCLA and post my I used to post regular quarantine comic strips on my Instagram.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Taylor. We really appreciate you. We start with our first question. Are you hood grown and and if so, how does that influence your aesthetic?
I am not hood grown. I'm from the suburbs, but my mom actually is. She grew up from the Fourth Ward in Houston, as well as South Central in LA. She put herself through college and graduate school and got married to my dad, who's in the military. I was born in Dover, Delaware, on the base out there. And
Oh,
then eventually we went to California because that's where my dad retired and my mom's family was still in LA area. And we've been there in Lancaster, California for the last, how old am I? 18 years. 18 years.
so did growing up on a military base, did that influence your work at all? Do you feel like it made you be more maybe introspective and inclusive and just like drawing to yourself type thing? How do you feel like did that influence your artist making?
Well, fortunately, my dad retired from the military when I was 2 months old.
Oh, okay. So you didn't
So I
experience
when
it.
I go to the on base, I go for like doctor appointments and grocery shopping. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like that weird thing where I can see how military kids grow up, but
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to not be one of them.
Nice.
I did do ROTC in school, and like my brother went to a military academy, but as I like grew in my politics, I'm actually really glad I didn't go down that route because one of my dad's only commands was us to not join the military.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that shows that he definitely had an experience that not all of us necessarily hear firsthand. So that's really interesting. Before we get into your like artwork, obviously the world is crazy right now. How are you feeling? How are you coping? How are you caring for yourself during these unprecedented times, as we keep hearing over and over again?
So I've been struggling.
As we
Yeah,
all have.
yeah, I've always had problems with major depression, anxiety, and like
Mhm.
mood disorders before the pandemic and was seeking um counseling, psychological services and medication. But when pandemic hit and it was like my last semester of undergrad, a lot of those resources and therapy that I was being able to have access to kind of ceased.
Mm,
And when I wanted to go to doctors at back home, when I came back to California, it was also no in-person stuff, no things. I lost my health care
mm,
for most of the pandemic and I had to get it back recently. So it was um, me more trying to survive the day as opposed to like really taking care of myself. And even now that I try to get myself back together to start graduate school, I'm still dealing with that anxiety crisis and um, depression and stuff that's really getting to me. And I actually had to take a couple of days off with classes just so early in the semester because even doing Zoom on for graduate school can be really overwhelming too.
mm. Yeah, I can only imagine. I only had to take one online class for grad school, and it was not fun to say the least. And I'm totally in the same boat, struggle with my own depression, anxiety. Recently got on medication. So, yeah, I feel that like not quite sure what's going on feeling and like the overwhelmed feeling. But do you use your art as a coping mechanism at all? Do you feel like that helps?
Oh, definitely. Like my art is like well, I started off with poetry before I started drawing mostly, but my art has always been something personal and a way to express myself. And
Mm-hmm.
the quarantine comics I did for like 193 days started on my first day of quarantine and then ended once I got on my antidepressants and was more stable. Also, I couldn't do it for my entire core team because
Yeah.
of Trump, probably be here for 2 years. But but it was definitely me just saying, because one thing that's so weird is like anxiety and depression are comorbid. Those are comorbid with ADHD, and both of those are all that's comorbid with bipolar too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, as I get one thing under control, I have to deal with the next step of it. So
Mm-hmm.
now that I finally got my depression under control through my art and through medication, now I'm in my ADHD phase where I can't even draw anymore. So it's like, how did I go 193 days drawing straight and I can't draw one thing in one day? So it's weird.
Yeah, no, I feel like as artists, like all of us are dealing with our own, mental health in different ways, and art can be great to, cope and deal. Like I actually I was talking to one of my students who just told me like, "Miss, I'm not going to get that assignment done for you this week." And I was like, "It's okay. Like I totally understand. I appreciate you letting me know. Like these times right now is just it's not meant for deadlines. It's not necessarily meant for like regular life. So I totally understand those like levels of just kind of digging yourself out of this kind of this leveled hole. But let's get on like more positive stuff in your art. How did you discover your love for drawing? Because it seems like it's second nature to you.
Um, I've been drawing all my life. I can't really tell you when I started because it's just always something I did. Like even back in preschool, I was drawing.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't become something I wanted to pursue for a career until I was almost done with high school because I live in like a really strong aerospace area. We have Boeing, we have Lockheed Martin, we have the Everett Air Force Base in this area. So it was kind of expected if you got good grades, you would go into an engineering or STEM job. So I was actually going to pursue mechanical engineering up until my senior year of high school, where I decided that I got sick of my robotics team. I got sick of the people I was going with math. I couldn't be stuck with these STEM boys for another 4 years and the rest of my life. So I decided that I was going to apply to art school in or art school in general, but I never really took an art class before. I only had like one, and it was just like me drawing for fun. And I had nothing of a portfolio, not even sure what portfolio was supposed to look like. So I applied to a lot of schools. Of course, got rejected because it was mostly fan art. And then I fortunately got into Rochester Institute of Technology for animation because I didn't have a portfolio requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, that's when I started pursuing it as like a career path.
Amazing. So you mentioned before that you started with poetry first, as your like first kind of love of art or your first connection to art. But you also now work with animation and comic books and comic panels and even just your single images that have a very narrative feel. How have you developed your use of visual language over time?
Well, I always say that animation is not a genre, like it's treated as a medium,
Mm-hmm.
and you can express any diversity of ideas. And when you treat animation as like one of the most versatile tool for storytelling, you can really be dynamic in like how you want to express yourself. So for me, when I was in writing poetry, I would have a lot of visual imagery in it, but then I always imagine in my head like short animations to go along with my words.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, I started to draw cover art for my poems, and it went into me just drawing art for myself and drawing Black women and African aesthetics. Like I really wanted to connect with my Blackness through my art because I wasn't really in an environment where I had a lot of Black friends. And part of the reason I became or pursued animation was because I watched so many cartoons that didn't have Black girls in it, or there was no Black girls as the main character. And I told myself I could make a cartoon if I wanted to. I know how to write and I know how to draw. So what's really stopping me? And so what's stopping me? Nothing. So I'm going to make a cartoon.
Yeah. The next Proud family, we're waiting for our next Penny Proud. We've been waiting. Like, it's been how long since we've got another Black animated cartoon, like television show?
I think the last one was OKKO, and that one got
Yeah.
canceled.
Yeah. Jeez. Anyways, talking about your love of cartoons, what and who inspires your style of drawing? You really have such a wide variety of character design. Some looks very original to your own style, and some kind of give me like a familiar sense. Some I'm feeling a little Steven the Universe. Some I'm feeling a little, Adventure Time. I can kind of get some of your favorite cartoons by looking at some of your drawings. But who and what are you inspired by with your drawing style?
To be honest, I actually don't feel like I have a drawing style. And I know that sounds weird because I don't have any consistency on how I draw. I kind of draw my mood at the time. So if something's like more sketchy, it's because I'm like in a more chaotic mood. If something is like really square and boxy and pointed, I'm in like in a little bit angrier mood. If something's like really soft, that means I'm in like a happier mood. I think what affects my style more is probably some of the designs of Proud Family, some of the exaggeration you would get through anime. But most of my drawings are like self-portraits because it was like my diary and comics. So a lot of it is just how I learned to interpret myself. And I like to draw myself in like a pretty and flawed way, because like one of the things I like to do is always give myself nice lipstick and eyeshadow, but also put deep bags under my eyes to let you know I'm still very tired as I do things. And so I can't really pin down like the main influence for my art other than just how I've seen myself over the years.
Awesome. So it will always develop as you develop, as every artist, really, their work is going. You talked about your mood and the way that you use that as a way to really that drives your style as you're drawing. Can we talk about your color palette? You have such a wide variety of color palettes. I'm seeing some that are like super like warm and fiery, others that are like super dark and cool, and then you have like a couple panels that are like this greeny, vomity color that like it really works with like the mood of the narrative that's going on. But what how do you pair your colors with your mood and your message of your comics and animations?
Yeah, well, one thing I say about my diary comics for that they doubled as my mood calendar, because one of the things that they recommend for people with mood disorders and depression and stuff is to like have yourself a mood calendar where you use a color and designate that color to how you feel for that day. And I didn't like have a necessarily a dedicated color for each mood, but I did want to attach a color to how I feel. And so I would sometimes just look at the empty blank canvas on my screen and think, what color do I feel like today? And a lot of it's blue, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's orange. Other times it's like, what color haven't I expressed for myself recently? And so I would try to use a color and fit my emotions on how I feel into that color, which is why a lot of my comics are like monotone in that kind of way, because it's less about trying to create, like, I guess, a full environment palette, but more just expressing that one emotion I'm feeling at that time.
Awesome. I love how connected your feelings and moods are to your narratives. Like I could definitely feel it the whole time and I felt like it was intentional, but like now that you're like, oh yeah, I was thinking about it all. Like I'm like, duh. So I can't wait for everyone to see your work and to look and discover exactly what we're pointing out. But to talk a little bit more about your panels, I mean, your comics, particularly your diary comics, you're kind of like 2 to 4 panel, almost political cartoons. They feel like journal entries. They feel very personal, but they're meant to be seen by all. How did you really like come about this kind of way of working? When did you think that you wanted to kind of use this way of like kind of allowing the audience to like kind of get a peek inside your mind in a little bit of a different way. How did you come about this concept?
So like I've always been really politically active. Like a lot of my friends know me as like the protesting friend.
Mhm.
So one thing, or like the advocate and stuff. So like if there was ever a problem in school with a professor or someone else, I would be the one, I guess, even expected to reach out or report or call out about the lack of diversity or bigotry. Like this is just who I am. And one thing that I guess bothers me about the I guess tone of Instagram compared to Twitter is that sometimes a lot of artists will focus on like a brand
Mm,
and then will keep their politics out of it. So they're not necessarily holding themselves or their followers accountable for things that were going on.
mhm,
And I felt like doing something where there's such a serious political climate, by doing these political cartoons, it wasn't just me expressing and venting about my own political beliefs, but also me holding my friends and followers accountable to the news that is happening. So that if I'm saying that, like I post a lot of comics on how to be a good ally for Black Lives Matter, because a lot of my white peers for school follow me on Instagram. So if they can say later, like, "Oh, I didn't do anything. I didn't know what to do." I'm like, "Well, honey, I posted my comic and I saw you like it. So you can't give me that excuse. You can't
mhm,
use your friendship with me as like the I've done enough, therefore I'm done with
mhm.
everything else. You have to do something personal. You have to actually be active and you actually have to be vocal.
Right.
um and it's also something where I wanted to like connect with the Black artists who I follow and interact with, let them know that we're feeling the exact same way. And even if you may be uncomfortable to post about this stuff, because Black artists, especially Black women, deal with a huge amount of harassment online. Like during October, we're being harassed by doing a Blacktober post every single
Mhm.
day. Like I actually got the N-word hard R on my Twitter for posting a Blacktober image. It was just fan art. So I understand why Black artists may not want to participate, but I did my comics in a political way so that they can feel that seen in a way too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense, and it's in a great medium, particularly because Black folks have always, read comic books. That's always been a part of our love. We've always, had a connection to visual art, especially as like a form of communication and, as a way to get information across. Unfortunately, the comic book community or the cartoonist community is seen as like a white man's world that we're not supposed to be in for some reason. And for some reason, a lot of them feel ownership over it, including the fact that they feel like, for some reason, if you ever make Sailor Moon into a black girl, oh girl, you're wrong for that, or whatever it may be. How dare you change, Wonder Woman into a black girl, like whatever it may be. I think it is like just super important just to like really one, include ourselves, and like using the medium that white folks have pretended like it's only theirs, and actually tell our stories in a really beautiful way. So great. I think it is a great medium for that. As we've been talking about, your work is really a celebration of Blackness while also commenting on large news stories that affect us. Um, and we talked a little bit about was your work has, you have always been political, but when did you feel like you made that transition into becoming like more of a political artist?
I actually can't even pinpoint the time my art became political, because I think art is inherently political.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that, if someone says their art isn't political, then that just means your art is the status quo of stuff. And if you don't talk about anything explicitly political in your art, that means you feel you're probably either protected politically, do not have a responsibility politically, you are privileged in a way to not worry about it. or you are so marginalized that the fear of expressing yourself is dangerous. But everything we create is political. Like I remember in elementary school, I was drawing art about the presidential elections for George Bush, and in 2008, because my parents were politically active and I wanted to be active for them too. So I'm like, you guys anti-Bush, I'm anti-Bush, kind of stuff. And
Gore sign. I'm all about Gore.
So, and it was also a point where I was also, I mean, all Black kids are hyper aware of their Blackness, but it was something where I knew my relationship with Blackness was always going to be complicated because I was a straight A student and white teachers would use me as a weapon to attack Black students who were struggling in school. So I was in a crosshair as a kid where I was the like exceptional Negro. And I was also in that thing where I want to get closer to the Black kids in my school, but they've already weaponized me as someone who's the enemy. And so I'm not even trusted in my peer group. And so I actually was really isolated in school up until finally making friends in like middle school. But it's one of those things where academia, elementary school conditioned me to feel less Black for having good grades. And that is one of the things that I guess kept me politically active, because I wanted to say that I'm still a Black woman, I'm still a Black person, regardless of it. And my success isn't anti to my Blackness, you know? But, and that's something that I'm still trying to express today, because I, even with some of my family members, where it's like, if you talk a certain way or you look a certain way, white people feel entitled to say, I'm Blacker than you.
Oh,
like, oh, I know. I had a ginger girl told me she's Blacker than me, girl. But and it's like, and then we just
and hood rat white girls think that they're blacker than you just because they got some acrylics on and got some bamboo earrings.
Yeah, and it's like, like I'm a dark-skinned Black woman, and when I'm walking down the street, a police is going to ask me about my vocabulary before they start shooting. That's not the reality where we live. And it's also very ahistorical to think that Black people somehow have a culture of unintelligence when we were writing letters in slavery to organize revolts, and they actually took away our literacy because we were so good at reading, and many of us were multilingual when slavery began in the colonies, that they had to ban literacy because we knew they were too dangerous to be communicating with each other. And as soon as we had the opportunity to learn again, we opened up several Black colleges, and we gain more literacy and more college graduates every single year at a higher rate than any other racial demographic. So it's ahistorical too.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir, girl. Well, it was great talking to you about your work. What's next for you in your work? You had your great, like, long comic book that lasted, 190 what days? We had
193 days.
93 days. That's crazy. But what's next? What do you have any big projects that you're working on? Any that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so part of the reason I went to graduate school is because I felt as soon as I got into my mojo with my artist voice, everything kind of ended. And as soon as I felt like I was skilled enough to express myself the way I wanted to in animation, I was already a graduate, and they were going to tell me that my next step is to work at a studio and work on someone else's projects, and I don't want to do that. So one of the benefits of graduate school is I get to create a film every year, and I can push harder with my voice and have more directing experience that way. I also will be able to get work as a teaching assistant.
Nice.
Because one of my biggest problems with undergrad is I had no Black professors in animation. whatsoever.
Ooh, I
And
only had 2 Black professors in college, and that was hurtful. That's why I'm a teacher now.
right. And
Yeah.
so I like lobbied every town hall. Can we hire a Black professor? We're hiring professors. Why not hire a Black one?
Mhm.
Never happened. Just got lists of excuses. So I probably gave my MFA is that I have the ability to teach. And if I wanted to, like, some years from now, wanted to work and start an animation program at HBCU where it's mostly going to be Black people, I can do that. And I know I would have the drive to do that. So it's just more so I can propel myself as a director and creator. And also I can have the tools later to come back and give it to other Black kids like me, because I'm like, there are too many white people in this industry, too many white old dogs in this industry, and they kind of need to be put down.
Oh, for sure. And they keep writing stories with, like, Black and brown people as central characters now because they know it's hip and happening. But you can't have all the writers and illustrators white. This makes no sense.
Yeah, and it's like puts a bad taste in my mouth because
Mhm.
shows like Craig of the Creek and Kipo and Owl House, they
Mhm.
have brown faces on the front, but the creators of it are white. And
Mhm.
they say, like, well, we have people of color as our storyboard artists and our main writers. I'm like, that's nice. But then the creator credit is still going to a white person at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
That's like
And
Moon
what
Girl and the Devil Dinosaur or Miss Marvel. Both of them, brown girls as the front, but they're drawn and written by a white man and a white woman. It's like,
exactly. And it's like taking away the opportunity that if a Black man cannot be the creator for a show about a Black boy's joy, then who can, right?
mhm.
And if you can't create your own show without a team of people of color writing it for you, then you're not qualified to create that show or showrun it,
Mhm.
because you literally do not have the range for your own characters you created.
Yeah.
But that's just a practice where they think diversity in characters is enough, and they don't add it to the executive producers or creators that really matter and actually have the power. But yeah.
That's why they had to do a whole rewrite of the Black Panther comics. Let's be honest. Like the way they created it the first time, it was made by white men, folks, and that's like a lot of people were aware of that. And then they had to rewrite it with Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's like plastered the blackest name that they could. They were like, "Hold up, guys, we can't be embarrassed again."
It's actually so weird because in the 70s and 80s, we had so many Black characters,
Mhm.
superheroes created, and then they kind of like dropped them off in the
Oh.
90s and 2000s, and now they're like trying to bring them back. But
Mhm.
people are saying, like, well, this diversity is forced, and like these were actually pre-made characters. Like Wonder Woman has a twin sister who is a Black woman named Nubia. It was introduced in the 70s. She's actually a better fighter than Diana and is a guardian for the underworld. And super cool character, and they recently brought her back in some new comics, and people like, why are you inserting this random Black woman into Wonder Woman's universe? I'm like, she's been around for 50 years, 40 years. So it's not inserting it, it's like giving credit where credit is due for characters that have history. But
amazing. Well, thank you so much for this conversation, not only sharing about your work, but also us, we can like nerd out a bit about our love of cartoons and comic books and like the want for Blackness to be involved more. Last question, where can the people find you on the internet, not in real life, but like where can they find your work?
So if you want to see most of my art, you can go to @InspectorNerd on Instagram. If you want to hear me pop off at racist and be political, you can follow me at @InspectorNerd on Twitter. I am political on Instagram, and I do post art on Twitter, but it's definitely like, this is mostly commentary and this is mostly artwork. And I do plan to start posting my films more regularly as I get done and as I storyboard. So there'll definitely be more updates in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing with me. I appreciate our conversation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye.